All right, everybody, I am back with a brand new DC update. And first off, I wanted to thank everybody who has responded to the video I put up earlier in regards to the changes to my channel and some of the things I want to start implementing. And so if you haven't checked out that video, please do so. It's going to have a lot of useful information on some of the things I want to implement on my channel and some things I want to do to communicate with you guys better. So you're definitely going to want to check that out. But I am back with a brand new DC update today. And a couple things I wanted to address before I get into the photos. And trust me, we do have some interesting stuff to go through today. But first, I wanted to address two things. First of all, I got a couple of interesting comments, and I wanted to address these specific comments. Somebody asked me, and this person comes in and is always backing up James Gunn, saying how he's got all faith in James Gunn. He says, why don't you do one video where you talk positively about James Gunn? And I can't do that, guys. I just can't. I took a wait-and-see attitude when he took over. But if you look at the facts, I can't say anything good about James Gunn. I just can't. There isn't a single comic book project he has done that is anywhere close to being faithful to the source material. Not even close. And, you know, I always talk about the DC stuff, and people brought up Guardians of the Galaxy, and also in the last film, the one gold character. I forget I'm not a Marvel fan, so I'm forgetting the guy's name off the top of my head. Warlock, the Warlock character, the golden guy. That he was portrayed nothing like his comic counterpart. And in fact, I brought up in my last video, I brought up the quote where James Gunn had told John Cena not to read Peacemaker comics, and somebody actually posted that article for me, and sure enough, he told the cast, do not watch or do not read any comic books associated with these characters, because he was going to be changing things up. He changes everything up. He is never faithful to the source material. Now, a lot of people will come in and say, well, Batman wasn't portrayed properly, Superman wasn't portrayed properly under Zack Snyder. You have to realize Zack Snyder did not write those movies. He just directed them. Whereas James Gunn is doing everything. Everything. It's on him. And the Batman and Superman actually had a story arc, and we're still Batman and Superman in the DCEU. So I wanted to address that first, that if you're going to bash Zack Snyder for stuff like that, you definitely have to attack Gunn to the nth degree on that. There is nothing that Gunn has done that I would say is amazing, and he's disrespected DC properties, and I've already talked about that. This other comment that I got, this one guy tried to argue with me, and I thought this was very interesting, about the DCEU, and he talked about how Zack Snyder had ruined everything. And I started bringing up the facts, and the fact is, more people went to those first 5 films. More tickets were sold for those first 5 or 6 films than anything that came after where they changed the formula and became comedy. It is a fact that more people went to those movies. And then they started to argue that Zack Snyder ruined Batman, that Batman versus Superman was the first, movie to really tarnish the character of Batman, and that the theatrical version of Justice League made even less and made Batman less valuable. And then he started to argue about the Dark Knight trilogy and how well it did. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're talking about the DCEU. You're changing the goalposts. And I said, show me one film where Zack Snyder directed a single Batman film, a standalone. And then he says, you just proved my point for me, because Batman vs. Superman had the 3 best superheroes on the planet in there, and they couldn't even break $1 billion. Well, I have news for you. If you adjust for inflation, that movie did gross over $1 billion. If you do it for today's standards, it did gross over $1 billion. In fact, it had incredible ticket sales. Yes, it dropped off in the second week, but we already know that the studio butchered it. So I said, again, show me a standalone Batman film where he tarnished Batman. He couldn't do it. And then he starts talking about team-ups with Marvel. And that's where people lose me. They keep changing the goalpost. When you prove to them that they're wrong, they change the subject and they'll change the goalpost. And I found that this is what is happening all over the internet right now with people who hate Snyder. And the DCU was never just about Snyder, and I keep telling people this in every video that I do, and I don't know how I can't make it more clear. Zack Snyder was a director. He did not write those movies. They were written by other people, okay? You have to understand that it is a definitive fact that there was more interest in the DCEU all the way up to Aquaman. That is where they sold the most tickets. So I'm looking strictly at tickets. I'm not looking at the profit. I'm not looking at, the budget for each of the films. I'm talking strictly interest, because everybody will argue that nobody was interested in that version of the DCEU. What? You cannot make that argument. It is a fact that more tickets were sold through Aquaman than any other time in the history of the DCEU that has gone on for the last 10 years. It is a fact. And then a severe drop-off, like a massive drop-off at the end after Aquaman, because everything became a comedy. Everything was more serious up to that point. And it's crazy that people will argue this. You can't. More people going to the movies proves that there was more interest. There were more ticket sales. Batman vs. Superman did not ruin anything. The interest was still there for years afterwards, and it became at a peak at Zack Snyder's Justice League, and everybody realized how awesome that was for the studio to not take advantage of the success of that movie. It's just mind-blowing that they did not continue the story after that. Like, how can you give the audience that and then not trail off of it? So there's my kind of rant and first thing I wanted to get out of the way before I get into this update, because those things have just been bugging me, and I couldn't make it more clear that you cannot argue with me or anybody anymore about the interest on the DCEU. It was definitely much more popular. More people were going to the movies when it was in the hands of Zack Snyder, when it was in the hands of David Ayer and Patty Jenkins and James Wan at the beginning. It is a fact. More tickets were sold, which means more interest, more comic books sold, more merchandise being sold, and you've got to look at even today, they're still capitalizing on Zack Snyder's characters for sales. For people who don't know, McFarlane's about to finally come out with that original version of Batfleck for sale coming up in about a week or so. I'm definitely going to pre-order that. I'm excited to get that figure. I've been waiting for them to do a figure like that. I also want a Christopher Reeve Superman. So I hope McFarlane will get to that stage, because we've got the 89 Batman. Now we need the other stuff. So thank you guys for bearing with me through that little rant. I just had to get that out of the way. Let's take a look at the photos. So this is trailing off of what I just mentioned. And this is from Men of Steel. It said, the numbers from Samba on Zack Snyder's Justice League are no doubt falsified in some manner. The former president of Warner Brothers Media described the film as a global phenomenon. Clearly, the film had to have had more views globally than in the U.S. The tweets below are promising, and everybody was showing their support for Zack Snyder's Justice League. And this is no joke. That movie made waves. There was more interest in the DCEU than ever before. When that got released, it restored the faith in a lot of people. I have never been so satisfied, finishing a movie as I did with Zack Snyder's Justice League, because a massive wrong had been righted and the future was bright. Then you had Black Adam and the announcement of Henry Cavill coming back as Superman, and then the studio pulled the rug out from under everybody. And I still say that there was fraudulent practices, false advertising with Black Adam when they knew they were going to change stuff, and they did that just to get people to try and go to the movies. And they did go see it here in the U.S., but it did not get a China release. So just as I had posted my video yesterday, Deadline Hollywood came out and had this exclusive that they are hearing that the DC Studios is planning to test actresses to play Supergirl, and that Millie Alcock, Amelia Jones, and Meg Donnelly are in the mix. So I think these girls look like they would be a good fit for this. I'm familiar with the actress in the center. I'm not sure from what. I do not know either girl on the ends, though. So these, she's got to be blonde. I'm just telling you right now, if they're going to do this comic accurate, she has to be blonde. She can't be dark-haired like they did with The Flash. Now, David Ayer came out and said this through The Hollywood Reporter and said, the people who have seen my cut have pretty much unanimously said that it's one of the best comic book movies ever made. And I believe it. I still think we deserve to see this. David Ayer deserves his day. to have this released and to finally get this out in the open so that we can see the DCEU as it was intended by the filmmakers without the studio involvement. I'm never going to stop fighting for this, guys, and I will never stop talking about it. It's important. David Ayer is talking about it. Everybody's talking about it, and it's something that does need to happen. So there was an exclusive from Screen Rant where Jason Momoa shares what he would love to bring to Lobo if he ends up playing the alien bounty hunter in James Gunn's DC universe. Now, there was still this cryptic message that James Gunn had done about a year ago or so where he said something was going on, but he never said what. And so I think whatever is going on with him in the future it's a done deal, but he's just not talking about it, probably because of some NDAs at this stage. Now, I don't know how much of this is true. I was not able to confirm this, and some people made comments yesterday that Forbes had come out and said that Warner Brothers Pictures is now stabilized and that they are poised to start acquiring some assets. That's going to directly contradict something I'm going to show you here in a few minutes, and I could not find that report by Forbes, so as far as I could tell, it wasn't true. Now, this is interesting as well. This is from Cinehouse. Said, okay, I got some info on the MCU and the DCU. Heard a strong rumor that Warner Brothers Pictures wants to license DC to Disney, and this will allow James Gunn to continue his DC universe, and Kevin Feige would still run the Marvel universe and give them the opportunity to cross over in the future. There's no doubt that would be a huge film if they did that, but it's not going to be based off of the characters that James Gunn wants to do. If you wanted a huge hit, you use the original characters from Marvel and you use the original characters from the DCEU, and you would get people in theaters to go watch that. But this watered-down version of the MCU 2.0 over here that they're trying to do with Warner Brothers just isn't going to cut it with audiences. People are tired of it, and you have to take it seriously. You can't make a joke out of it. And so I don't know if this is true or not, but my guess is it would be because James Gunn was talking about wanting to do a crossover and has been talking about it in the past. So this is the other bit of news that is crazy. And I did confirm this. This actually happened. It was all over the news yesterday. That David Zaslav sells $9.5 million in shares, Warner Brothers, specifically Warner Brothers Discovery shares, for tax purposes. Why would he need to do that if the company is solvent? If the company is in great shape and doing well, he wouldn't need to do that for tax purposes. So something is definitely still going on with Warner Brothers. Now, they have brought a couple of people over from Paramount, which is pretty cool. It's definitely going to help them in the end. And I heard that those deals were specifically done through Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi. They're the only two people down there that have any sense of anything for what the audience wants and what's good for the company. Because I could tell you, James Gunn and David Zaslav and Peter Safran, they have no idea what they should be doing with these companies. Now, this is pretty cool. I've been waiting for this to get released. It says Batman Caped Crusader, and it should be caped. I don't know why it says Caped Crusader. Maybe it is Caped Crusader. No, it is caped. The Caped Crusader is going to be more violent than Batman the Animated Series. That's pretty cool. Now, people don't know why this is. Well, you wouldn't believe. I've been doing some behind-the-scenes, work and looking at some of these properties, from back when these things got released. And there's a Ghostbusters book that I was reading, and they talked about all the restrictions that they had doing television for kids and how they weren't able to do a lot of things. And I'm surprised we ever even got the real Ghostbusters based on all the restrictions that they had. Batman the Animated Series was the same thing. There's some documentaries that come along with the special Blu-ray boxed edition of Batman the Animated Series, and I was watching some of the documentary stuff on there, and they were talking about all of the restrictions that they had as well, and it kept them from doing a lot of the things that they wanted to do. And Bruce Timm came out and said that this show is going to allow them to do what they originally envisioned Batman the Animated Series to be, without having all of those restrictions by normal television. So I'm actually excited for this to get released. Everyone was hoping it would release late last year. It never did. So hopefully sometime this year, and hopefully soon. So let's talk about Zachary Levi here for a minute. He has definitely embarrassed himself with his ungracious, departure from DC and the DCEU. And somebody asked him, Zachary Levi, do you think a Chuck movie is still possible? If there's one, I want to do a Chuck marathon before it comes. Zachary Levi responded with, yes, absolutely. I'm still working on it slowly but surely. So take that as you will. It looks like there will be a revival for Chuck in the future, which will be a continuation of the story that they had finished. I actually enjoyed that show. Lost a lot of respect from him when he played both sides of the debacle with Shazam 2. Now, this last bit of news that I have here has to do with this acquiring of, what do you call it? Warner Brothers picking up Tom Cruise. And this is what I kind of mentioned this in my last video, but Warner Brothers bosses are hoping to get Tom Cruise to develop Edge of Tomorrow 2 very soon. And they've been trying to get this project off the ground for years. And they're saying that this could also help the DCU, that this is possibly a ploy by Pam Abdy and Mike DeLuca to do a backdoor thing to eventually maybe push Gunn out when his contract ends and get the people in there to shape the DCU the way it should be. That's just rumor. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've been reading in a lot of people's posts and stuff behind the scenes. So regardless, there's a lot of moving parts. And I can tell you that they already had a script for The Edge of Tomorrow 2, but that's when Bill Paxton. So when he passed away, they had to change the whole thing. And since then, it's been in purgatory the whole time. Like, they've been trying to get this off the ground, but they all want to come back and do an Edge of Tomorrow 2. And that was one of the most unique films to come out in many, many years. So I really enjoyed it. So there you have it, the DC news for the day. I will continue to do practically daily updates now. It's almost daily as information comes out. I do appreciate all of the support, and if you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and you will be notified as I have new videos go up. I will be back tonight with a Beekeeper review. I'm going to see that this evening, and I will have my review up as soon as I get back. I appreciate all the support. We will see you guys on the next video.